Hello everyone, my name is Vijay Kumar and I'll be describing some of the challenges with the discovery of tabular data, primarily from documents that are found within the scientific and technical domains, and describe some of our early experiences in addressing these challenges using a knowledge graph-driven approach. I'm presenting this work on behalf of my co-authors listed here from both GE Research and from the University of Maryland at Baltimore County. A lot of information, as we all know, gets captured and exchanged in the form of documents of various kinds. Some examples listed here. When we think of these documents, we typically think of them as containing a lot of text. Searching over these documents usually almost translates into searching over the textual content of these documents. However, within these documents, there's also a whole lot of critical information that gets densely packed into more structured elements such as tables, graphs, charts, equations, and so on. Now, as the rates of creation and publication of these documents continues to skyrocket, thanks to generative AI and other factors, the relative proportion of information that gets locked away within these tables is also continuing to grow. As a case in point, back in 2021, we assembled a data set of open access publications related to COVID-19 and found that this data set from about 60,000 publications contains well in excess of 120,000 tables. So what does this mean? This means that if you're a search engine or you're a discovery system trying to support search over documents, that means you can no longer afford to ignore the information that's present within these tables. So we view these documents not only as text, but also as a rich source of tabular information. Now, looking at it more from a data management lens, we essentially treat documents as being analogous to multimodal data lakes. People throw in a lot of text into these documents, but then along with the text, there's also a large number of slightly smallish tables that supplement this textual content. Now, while there's been extensive prior and ongoing research work to address the discovery of tables on the web and in data lakes, there's not been much focus on tables found in scientific documents, or scientific tables, as we shall refer to them henceforth. More recently, the AI community has started to look at scientific tables, specifically targeting different kinds of downstream tasks as listed in this table here. However, the discovery from scientific tables continues to be an underexplored topic, and that is the focus of our work. Now, a couple of questions come to mind. Firstly, why are we even doing this? I mean, why is this a problem worth solving? I mean, who would stand to benefit from a solution to this problem? So it's worth noting here that this work of ours was funded by IARPA, which is the United States Intelligence Agency's research arm, via a seedling program to help their analysts within the intelligence community. For intelligence gathering, which is what a lot of these analysts do, they need to look at many different sources of information, including documents, and more specifically, some of these documents might contain some critical information present within tables. Once the analysis is complete, the analysts then look to compile their findings and conclusions in the form of an intelligence report, for which, as you can see here, the intelligence community has laid out standards which encourage the active use of tables and other forms of visual presentations in order to supplement the textual content. Likewise, with the emergence of AI-assisted scientific research, discovering scientific tables becomes more important to a company like GE, which operates with the fundamental sciences, particularly in domains like materials science, where data sets are scarce and hard to come by. As an example, when designing new alloys, one typically needs to combine data from multiple such tables present in the literature in order to assemble a quality data set, as depicted here. And as the NSF put it recently in one of their calls for proposals, such data collection from documents and literature may need to go back in time, like 100 or 200 years worth of journals, in order to painstakingly put together a single quality data set. So clearly, there is a growing demand to synthesize tabular data from documents in a more verifiable manner. And secondly, are scientific tables any different as compared to traditional web tables or open data sets? So our take here is that scientific tables, especially those found in documents, are in fact unlike any traditional tabular data that you'll encounter in benchmark datasets. They have this unique combination of characteristics that bring with it new challenges and opportunities. First among those are domain-specific entities. Now, like web tables, scientific tables also contain certain amounts of text, but where they do contain text, this text often has a lot more by the way of domain-specific entities or terminologies. And like open data, scientific tables also contain a large amount of numerical data, but there's a lot more than just numbers within these tables. Along with numbers, there's also information around the ranges for specific attributes. Along with the ranges, some of these cells might contain multiple numerical values. And a typical strategy is to include the ranges along with the measured quantities within these cells. And as you can see here, neighboring cells within these tables are often merged. And this last point brings us to the second quality, which has to do with the structure of these tables. Now, perhaps the most distinguishing characteristic of these scientific tables is their high structural variability. So like web tables, these scientific tables are also optimized for human consumption and try to minimize the information overload on the human that's trying to consume that data. But unlike traditional tables, scientific tables, those found in documents, are meant to fit in a page. Right? So they're structurally formatted to fit within a lot of spatial constraints. Like there's limits on the size of a page, there's limits in the number of pages, there's costs associated with printing the documents. Then there's also the desire to put the tables right next to the text that describes them, and so on and so forth. So very often, this leads to all kinds of information compaction approaches or tricks. For example, if a table is too tall to fit in a page, you simply flip the columns and the rows so that it fits. Now, if a particular column in that table is too wide, something like vaccination rate per million of the population, for example, typically the creators of the table shorten it into something like VACRT. And if you're lucky, that kind of context around what that cellular content means is captured somewhere else within the document. So overall, without any standards, the scientific tables end up with structures that you're unlikely to encounter in any open tabular datasets. And we did a detailed analysis of tables that we found in our data set of COVID-19 related tables, and found that these structures have important implications on understanding the content of these tables. And next, like web tables, scientific tables exhibit diffuse context in that the context that is needed to understand or infer the meaning of a table comes not just from within the table, but it could come from sources outside of the table as well. So in order to understand a scientific table, one might need to look at, say, the caption or headers, footers, textual paragraphs, other tables within the same or even possibly other documents as well. And finally, information reliability or lack thereof is a serious concern with these scientific tables. Say you're an analyst looking for information around treatments for COVID-19. Now, both these tables that you see here, which are drawn from different papers out there, they contain relevant information around the treatments for COVID-19, but the first table here to the left comes from a reputed research group and is published in one of the Nature journals, whereas the second one on the right is from a non-peer reviewed preprint article, which was actually subsequently retracted. So in this case, there's clearly grounds for picking the former over the latter. So clearly, along with information reliability, there's a lot of challenges in dealing with these scientific tables. Our research goal was to understand these scientific tables, not solely on the semantics of their content alone, but also in the broader context of their visual structure and reliability. What does a cell mean? What does this row mean? Or what does this column mean? What is the table as a whole trying to convey? How reliable is the information in the table, and so on and so forth. But at the time, our customer at IARPA was like, well, all this sounds great in principle if you could do that. But at the end of the day, how will I use it? Right? How will this train my analysts to be better at their job? So at that point, we had to pivot. And in addition to just understanding the content of the tables, we had to build out a practical search system that would help analysts discover tables from documents. And that's the focus of this paper. The thing about scientific tables is that very often a single table is not going to contain all the information that is required by an analyst. More often than not, information from multiple tables has to be put together in the right context. And so we attempted to not just find and return a list of matching or relevant tables, but to also go one step further and merge the content of multiple tables on the fly in order to generate new tables. Our end-to-end approach starts with first extracting or harvesting tables from documents. We implemented a pipeline to assemble such tables on demand from PubMed Central. Next, we represent these tables as semantically annotated linked data objects. For this, we have a neat semantic interpretation, table interpretation pipeline, which we published earlier this year. That does an extensive structural characterization of the tables, which then informs an entity linking approach in order to match the content within these tables to the Wikidata knowledge graph. At the end of this step, the table's structural assessments, semantic table interpretation, and reliability estimates are all encoded in the form of triples within an RDF knowledge graph. Here is a visual depiction of what an example table looks like when it's encoded as triples within our knowledge graph. As you can see, for a given example table, we have annotations at the document level, at the table level, at the row level, at the column level, at the cell level, statements of facts made about the estimated reliability of the table, and so on and so forth. Lastly, we built a framework to effectively search and discover tabular data from our knowledge graph of scientific tables so that analysts can query or discover data in the knowledge graph without having to write any complex queries themselves. Our preliminary implementation of this framework includes a couple of foundational components, including a query model, as well as a discovery engine. On top of this, we were able to demonstrate some basic hybrid keyword and table-based semantic search capability, along with table merging capabilities for on-the-fly generation of new tables. To give you an idea of how our data discovery system works from a user perspective, first, a user provides a discovery request, either as a list of keywords or search terms, or provide them in the form of a partially specified query table. Each search term in such a table-based discovery request can then be semantically resolved to the right Wikidata concepts. For example, the search term country gets resolved to the Wikidata QID Q6256. This helps us select the right matching tables. Next, to filter the matching tables, users can specify a rich set of contextual constraints, including on the time of publication of the document, constraints on coverage, which are used to express the degree to which the candidate tables in our knowledge graph should match with the query table, constraints on reliability, ranking preferences for the table, and so on. Then in response, the user gets a suitably ranked list of relevant tables. What you see here in this headers column is basically the header cells of the matching tables, regardless of the structure of the tables, regardless of whether these are vertical or horizontal tables. Basically, what we're doing is taking the semantics of the query table and then matching them against the semantics of the header cells for each table in our knowledge graph. In this case, we are trying to do an exact match of the Wikidata QIDs. And then from this list of tables, users can get the provenance for each result table to figure out which document that table comes from. And that speed dial that you see here for each result table is an indicator of that table's reliability or trustworthiness. It's estimated based upon the provenance of those tables. Under the hood, the brain of our system is really a discovery engine that basically takes the select, filter, and rank preferences from a query model specified by the user and automatically compiles them down into basic triple patterns, graph patterns, and other clauses and subqueries within the Sparkle query language, validates that auto-generated Sparkle query, and executes it against the knowledge graph of tables. And once that's done, our system packages the result of that query into a relational table response for the user. Now, the novel aspect of our system is that any data analysis operation that's performed on these tables is actually informed by the inferred semantics of the table that we are maintaining within our knowledge graph. So a quick couple of slides showing the incremental Sparkle query construction in action. First, we bootstrap a Sparkle query containing some initial triple patterns and basic graph patterns based solely on what needs to be returned as part of the user discovery request. Next, we incrementally augment that initial Sparkle query along with subqueries corresponding to the selected entities from the user request. And to that, we also add additional filter clauses corresponding to each of the contextual constraints specified by the user. Finally, in response to a table-based request, our system also includes a preliminary implementation of a capability that we refer to as on-the-fly table generation, which is based on a union of multiple candidate tables. So in this simplified example, you see that the top search result is a fuse table. It's a table that fuses the content of two or more other result tables into one. Basically, in this case, we are taking the content or the rows of each table and then merging them into one table. So what you see here in this fuse table is a combination of the rows of table 1 and the rows of table 2. And basically using some of the columns, a subset of columns in these tables, in this case vaccine and country, that are deemed to be semantically compatible in order to merge the rows of these two tables. So besides merging the rows of these tables based on semantically compatible columns, there are a number of additional challenges in doing so, such as dealing with duplication of rows, or worse, encountering conflicts between the rows of these compatible tables. And those are things that we are actively exploring at this point. And besides unions, we are also at the early stages of figuring out how we fuse the table, the contents of multiple tables via join operations as well. And so in conclusion, scientific documents contain hundreds of thousands of tables that contain useful information. Discovering data from such scientific tables has many unexplored challenges because of their complex structures, domain specificity, information reliability, and so on. In this work, we inferred the semantics or the intended meaning of such tables with reasonably high precision and organized them in the form of an RDF knowledge graph. We then built a system to discover tabular data from such knowledge graphs by baking in the table semantics into the discovery engine in order to influence how queries are processed and how various tabular data analysis operations are performed. The novel aspects of our work include supporting table-based semantic search queries and integrating all of this into a practical system that can generate tables by semantically fusing the contents of multiple tables on the fly. At this time, our work is rather still preliminary, and we are actively looking to collaborate with other interested researchers in order to move this forward. Finally, a word of acknowledgement for our sponsors at IARPA. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my talk. Please feel free to reach out in case you're interested in working on scientific tables. Thank you.